All right, so let's move on to this Biden border deal. Maybe we start from the context of the media. This is a guy who over and over again for 3.5 years, first of all, he kicked off his administration by saying how proud he was to repeal 94 Trump actions to open the border up. Then he said for 3.5 years, I can't do anything about it. I need Congress to act. And then today he says, hey, guess what I can do? I can close the border like that. And no one says, wait a second, you're the same guy.
No, he's getting worked over in the conservative media, as well he should. But here's how bad it is. Here's how bad this guy is. Biden is the second worst president in our history, okay? And then I'll explain that in this book. James Buchanan, the guy who totally booted the Civil War, is the worst. But Biden comes in, all right, and he knows that the Trump administration has migration contained through the Remain in Mexico policy. He knows that. Everybody knows it because the stats from Homeland Security say about 800,000 crossed over in 2020. Okay. Now the number is 5 million a year, whatever it may be. Okay. So he knows it and he destroys it anyway. And he watches the destruction for 3.5 years, as you just pointed out. And he does nothing. He blames Trump, which is absurd. He blames Congress, which they have some blame. They should have passed a much more stringent immigration law a long time ago, but he doesn't blame himself. Then he gets out today, and if you watch it, it was painful to watch Joe Biden behind that lectern.
After weeks of intense negotiation between my staff and Democrats and Republicans, we came to a clear bipartisan deal. It was the strongest border security agreement in decades. But then Republicans in Congress, not all, but walked away from it. Why? Because Donald Trump told them to.
Number one, he was slurring his words all over the place. You could barely understand him. Number two, he had prompter stare, the teleprompter. He's like this. He clearly doesn't know what he's saying, all right, even though he probably rehearsed it 10 times. And number three, he walked off the stage like a 2-year-old child. I mean, if you watch, because this is my job to report on him, all right? And he could barely get off that stage. And of course, answered no questions on arguably the most important item in the election this year, illegal immigration and the unintended consequences of it. He answers no questions. That's insulting to every single American. Hey, stand there and answer some questions. What's wrong with you? And I could go on for an hour about what's wrong with Joe Biden. But if you're still thinking about voting for him, I don't care whether you hate Trump 80 different ways. You're voting for catastrophe if he gets another 4 years.
What would it take for Biden to overcome Buchanan in your book as the worst president?
Well, you can't, because James Buchanan did so much damage. Nobody's ever even heard of him. Okay. So many deaths on both sides, the North and the South. That never had to happen. Okay. If Buchanan had gone in after Pierce and said, hey, you people in the South, you better obey federal law. We're sending the troops down now. South was not prepared for that. He could have crushed them. He didn't. He didn't do anything. He was scared. He was a coward. I prove it. And then when Lincoln came in, it was a fait accompli because the South in those 4 years rose in power, military power, to challenge the Union. So nobody will be ever any worse than James Buchanan.
So, you talk about he was weak. He didn't. I feel like present day Republicans aren't fighting, right? I was listening to a member of Congress yesterday talk to a group, and he was talking about the debt and deficit and all these looming problems we have and the lack of political will. I think about the border. I think about what we've been doing with impeaching or holding Mayorkas and all these other people, Merrick Garland, accountable. And I feel like it's a lot of talk and not a lot of will on the Republican Party side. The leaders on Capitol Hill are willing to have the hearing, and then they cower and they go, oh, okay. I mean, the most basic things The only thing they've ever done this year that I actually will give them credit for is the TikTok ban. And even that, I thought they were going to cower for. But basic spending.
Trump's on TikTok. Look, the reason that the Republican Party, there are two reasons that it's not as effective as the Democratic Party. Number one, the Democrats are 100% behind the progressive movement. Very little moderate. Manchin just quit. He was a moderate. He couldn't take it anymore. So the Democrats aren't. The Republicans are divided between Republicans of tradition, which you are, okay, and then the new Republicans who are bomb throwers. And the bomb throwers are the ones that get all the attention by the press, and that's intentional, okay, because the corporate media, the corrupt corporate media wants to portray the Republican Party as radical rightists, okay, we just want to blow up everything. But what's happening now is the Republican Party senses, the leaders of it, okay, sense they could win across the board in November. So they don't want to do anything controversial or to get blown up. All they want to do is basically say how bad Biden is, because you can do that all day long, all right, and hope they get power in November, which is possible. So that's their strategy now.
But do you think, I guess my point is, I think there's a little bit of a blend. I want to see, yes, I'm traditional. I embrace that. But I also feel like I want to win. And I feel like I ask these Republicans time and time again. I'll give you an example. Why are we, as the party that controls the House of Representatives, not making the Democrats have to defend things like NPR and PBS and saying, okay, make them defend silly spending, ridiculous spending? There's nothing that the Republicans are doing to put the Democrats on defense. It's always, gosh, we can't go too far.
Okay, but it takes a charismatic leader in Congress to do that.
True.
And certainly Mitch McConnell isn't that. The new Speaker, Johnson, he's pretty articulate, but nobody knows who he is yet. So there's nobody in Congress who can really make that case. Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, is the most powerful man in Congress. He's going to blunt anything the House Republicans do, and he's just going to knock it down. So legislative-wise, you don't have any shot as long as Schumer is controlling the Senate, okay? So the Republican Party's searching now for some kind of congressional leadership, particularly in the Senate, all right? Because they don't have anybody in the Senate. No one. And that is a real deficit for that party.
Well, and I think we do need to have the president, i.e. Trump, back to lead this.